Hello there. This is just a bite-sized peek into our comprehensive back-end development course, and I'm all about sharing snippets like this on our YouTube free of charge, so sit back and enjoy the video. But if you're interested in diving deeper, why not consider a Covalence community membership for just $25 a month? It's your golden ticket to a full-stack learning experience, curating all of these videos into a comprehensive course, complete with lecture notes, reference sheets, and challenging labs that are really going to push your learning into overdrive. But the perks don't end there. You're going to unlock the keys to our front end and our React, or my React course as well. Not to mention you're going to have access to live Discord support, meaning you can harass me all you want, exclusive coding events, plus professional assistance for crafting killer portfolios and resumes. Just think of it as your personal coding toolkit, ready and waiting to help you build your future. So check the description down below for a link, and remember, whether you're here for a casual browse or a deep dive, just enjoy the video. What up, intrepid students? We are continuing our discussion on third-party APIs with taking payments or donations, in our case with Stripe. Stripe is a major third-party API that is, you'll hear it in podcasts as sponsors. You will see it everywhere when you start trying to make any kind of e-commerce style stores for your friends or family as some of your first projects, or even making one for yourself. I don't know what you're going to do, but more than likely you are going to encounter Stripe. Like I said, it's kind of like an industry-leading payment option, and I'm going to show y'all how to integrate it at a kind of lower level here in our applications. We're going to start with like a fresh boilerplate clone after this lecture. And in the reality of things, you're probably going to get some kind of template from Stripe or something like that that will give you a quick and easy way to set up that e-commerce store for whatever reason you have or whatever you're building to take payments. And it's going to set all that stuff up for you. You're probably not going to have to code a lot of server-side stuff yourself. So you will understand a very custom implementation of how to do so here to understand the workflow and the importance of understanding how to integrate it, right? You're going to learn, like we did back in Mailgun, about the secret API keys, signing up for their site and dashboard. You're going to kind of see a pattern emerging here for a lot of major third-party API integrations into your applications. You typically go to their site, you register, you get a key, you hide it in an environment variable, you connect it to your server somehow. Your server does server-to-server communication in some cases. Sometimes you'll do client-to-server communication with that third-party API. But they all follow that same pattern. So I think it's important to know how to integrate them here for practice, so this isn't necessarily something you need to include in all your projects, right? But if you are familiar with this and can understand it and describe it, that will still just look great upon you as a learner, especially if you have like no background in this kind of stuff. Being able to integrate these things into your applications, or even like a sandbox app that you can show off to your interviewers. Pretty cool stuff. So what is it? Stripe is a full payment processing platform targeted for developers. It allows you to charge credit cards, bank accounts via ACH, and set up recurring subscription charges as well. We use it here on Gravity, as a matter of fact. Stripe shoulders the burden of PCI compliance for us, which is an expensive and stringent security certification to which systems holding credit card data must adhere. So that's right, we are signing up for credit card data, really, like holding credit card data, and we don't want that responsibility on us or our applications. So we need to figure out a way to get around all that necessary bureaucratic red tape and security red tape, and figure out how we can set this up on our apps if we need to, or understand an app we're walking into that uses it, and understanding the basics of what workflow it's probably using. So it's great. I love it. I've used it on a couple apps myself in the past, and I am reshooting all these videos a little over a year after my original reshoots of them, because they had a major API change from their old workflow to our new workflow that I'm teaching here. And I figured it'd be great to just have, well, the most up-to-date version. So let's continue. So signing up for an account is straightforward. You simply go to Stripe's website and you register for an account. You'll have to do two-factor authentication and all that fun kind of stuff. You'll have to make sure to verify your email address before it allows you to start taking any kind of payments. So make sure you follow that typical pattern of go register, verify your email, log into your dashboard for the first time, and poke around for a little bit. And heck, even poke around their documentation if you are so inclined. It can be it's great documentation, but it can be a little overwhelming at first if you don't know what you're looking for. Hence why we're here in our course, where I'm trying to give you the distilled TLDR, here's what you gotta know version, right? So enjoy all the stuff I wrote here. So There's like a little developer toggle as well on their website for toggling the development dashboard, so you can see like your development keys and things like that. I mean, I'll be showing you how to access these in the walkthrough, so you can feel free to pause now and go ahead and go take a look around, but know that I'll be actually doing it myself, grabbing my keys that you would then find on your version on your dashboard during the walkthrough, so don't stress too much. Right. So you get two keys in particular, one called a publishable or sometimes public key. This is one that's going to be connecting in our client side code. So this is one, again, remember in the client, there is no environment variable secrecy. Like you can have environment variables for, toggling things, but there is no secret. So this publishable key is able to be added to our code directly and pushed to GitHub. So don't panic on your public key or publishable key. I can't remember exactly what they called it, but that part is okay. It's basically telling the Stripe servers whose app is making the request for this payment intent, right? Who wants to make this payment, or in our case, donation, since we don't really have an e-commerce app built up or anything. We're pretending it's going to be a donation form like on our blogs or something like that. But basically, this public key is going to be telling Stripe servers, Luke's app and Luke's account is the one that's making it, or your account is the one making the intent for this payment, for example. So it's going to go on our front end code. It can be pushed to GitHub, and you're not going to get blocked or harassed or something like that. So just make sure that it helps inform Stripe that it's our front end form that's connected and our Stripe account that's taking these payments. That's the whole purpose here. The second key you get is our actual secret API key, and this we're going to have to use environment variables to keep hidden. So this is the part, the secret key is the one that goes on our server and will be not pushed to GitHub. So you have to make sure that the secret API key is added to your .env file. The .env file exists in your .gitignore and you don't push it to GitHub. Then we're going to simply use that to connect to it, and then we are good to go. So getting things up and running on their dashboard is very straightforward. Just go through that registration, verification of your email, and whatever two-factor authentication that they make you do. Mine is typically just an SMS code as my two-factor auth. A lot of these major ones will have that kind of stuff just to prevent spam, add additional layers of security, and things like that. So remember, public key goes in your front end. That's okay to put out in your GitHub. Secret key doesn't go in your front end. It goes in your server and will not be pasted there directly. It needs to be in an environment variable that is not pushed to GitHub. If it is pushed to GitHub, more than likely, Stripe has crawlers that say, hey, if somebody in a package JSON and a JavaScript project has our Stripe packages installed and you see the key pushed in there, they're probably going to lock your account and require you to email them to let them know that, hey, I removed the offending code from GitHub and I want my account able to take payments again. So keep that in mind. You could easily lock yourself out if you push your secret key to GitHub. So for installations, we have three primary ones. We have Stripe, surprise, that's going to be the library that helps connect everything to the Stripe API from our applications. Basically, this will take the API version we wish to use because they have many versions and changes that happen across those versions. So it's actually important in their documentation, as you'll learn, to specify what version of Stripe we're going to be using in our code. This will also take that secret key as well, which will come from an environment variable. Let me stress that again. And when that is all connected, this basically acts as a wrapper around their API endpoints. Because at the end of the day, they're going to have some kind of server, probably with REST endpoints. I don't think it uses GraphQL, but they're going to have a server that we need to communicate with. And instead of us having to learn how to write the appropriate requests, we're going to have this Stripe library give us a set of functions that will instead allow us to more simply, just like we learned in Mailgun, more simply to interact along with their API. We just get functions that we get to call and pass some parameters to. We don't have to learn how to make the HTTP request. We don't have to learn what headers to add, where to add our tokens, and all that kind of crazy stuff. It's all just wrapped up in this nice, nifty library for us. And because it has TypeScript already added to it these days, unlike back in the day, I believe, we don't have to install any typings either. So no typings required in this one. So moving on, we have then Stripe.js. This package will be connecting our client-side application to the Stripe servers, right? And this is where our publishable key goes. So this is our backend Node Express library where we connect our secret key. This is our front end client side library where we connect our publishable key. It also has an additional tidbit to it, right? So other than just providing the ability to attach our publishable key that again tells Stripe servers, this is my app with this key making these requests. It also provides a fraud functionality script. So it provides a script that we are required to add into our, in our case, index HTML. If this was if we weren't doing a React front end like you're doing a traditional HTML, CSS front end, then you would add this script to the page that's going to have the checkout form. In that case, it'd be like my checkout.html. In our case, we only have a single page application with a React client side, aka an SPA. So that's why we're going to add this script to our index HTML and just call it a day. But that script it adds provides your common protection on certain fraud attempts and click hijacking and cross scripts and things like that. So it's pretty cool. Right, is make sure that Stripe.js is loaded on every page, not just our checkout page. It allows Stripe to detect suspicious behavior that may be indicative of fraud as customers browse your website. So, pretty cool. And it has its own typings, which I love TypeScript first functionality these days, right? And then finally, we have this library, which you will not need, obviously, unless you are in, like the name implies, React. So yeah, this provides the React components that allow us to quickly add and inject the appropriate props into our forms. They also provide the fields where you fill out credit card information, things like that, and the API to style them. Just check out the documentation, which is linked somewhere in this markdown, but it's easy to find if you just go look up Stripe React Docs. It'll bring up the exact page you probably need with the most up-to-date information, right? So, like I said, it provides several components, but not just that, it also provides several hooks that you will require in order to properly use this library. It has its own typings, which is always brilliant. And it makes sure that this is how Stripe will be handling someone's credit card information to make sure that it never directly touches our code. So, unlike the Mailgun videos where we could write out our server-side code, test it with Postman, maybe we could here as well, but it's less obvious to a newbie about how this process works. Where in Mailgun, like I was trying to say, we can make a Postman test that tested our endpoint and then code our front end that made the same request, and boom, we're all done and working. This is a little bit more complex, so we're going to actually have to code our server-side stuff first. We can make a Postman test, but there's not going to be doing much for us. We would rather instead be just console log what our secret looks like, but we're going to write our server-side code and talk about it. Then we're going to go to the client side and code something a little bit more complex because of these API changes that have warranted me reshooting this whole module in our backend and full stack courses since they share these videos. So, Server-Side Express is where we're going to start in this lecture. So, and I'll probably cut off this lecture and then talk about the client side in the next video, since I want to really make sure I drive home the big picture workflow of how this, look at that typo, oh, hashtag professional, Server-Side Side Express. How did I manage to pull that off? We're gonna do this live, folks. There we go. Boom, look at that professionalism right there. I don't even know how I managed to type it that bad, my God. All right. Let's try that again. Server-Side Express. So again, here's the documentation link. I knew it was somewhere in here. It's good. It's solid. And basically, I would probably, you have a book icon in their dashboard where you can also quickly go to their documentation. It has great sets for developers on multiple platforms to get started and get going here. But again, I'm going to give you all the TLDR of how we're going to handle it ourselves. So it used to be that what you would do is you would fill out an amount form. You'd have the credit card checkout form. You'd fill that out with someone's credit card info or some test info, which I'll show you at the bottom of this lecture. Or there's my cat Percival saying hello with his tail. Don't bump the microphone, dude. Last time you bumped the microphone, it unplugged the micro USB, and I lost like 30 minutes of recording thanks to him. Thanks, Percy. He'll come up on camera at some point. So, like I was attempting to say before my cat so beautifully knows how to interrupt anything I ever try and do. We are going to be the old way of doing things is you would tokenize somebody's credit card information, and you would do is you would send some info to Stripe that would tokenize somebody's credit card. You would get that token that represented that person's credit card and charge that on your server, and you could store that on your server. That is the old workflow, and it's still doable, but I believe their documentation says that PCI compliance then goes on you with that old method of doing things, and we're not gonna bother with that because that's terrible. We don't want to bother with PCI compliance. We want someone else to handle that for us. That's the whole purpose of this third-party API integration. So our goal instead will be to use the Payment Intent API, which is one of their newer APIs. I remember it being in beta the last time I shot these videos for that API, for the old tokenized credit card API. So this new Payment Intent API is definitely on the newer side of things, and basically the one that we are being forced to migrate to. So I wanted to reshoot these videos for the newest version possible. So what we're going to be doing is creating a post route on our Stripe API that we're going to connect our API secret key to, and that will be that Stripe node library. And what its purpose is going to be is we're going to get a amount from the front end, send it to our server. Our server will then ask Stripe's server, so this is now a server-to-server communication, which is typically more secure than client-to-server. And we're going to say, hey, I have a user on my front-end connected account, the public key, that wishes to pay this amount. So in our case, because we don't have an e-commerce app, this is someone wants to donate $10 to me. They intend to pay this. Stripe will take that intent and go, okay, I'm going to take this payment intent of $10 and have a pending charge on your account. Here is the client secret that I want you to share with your website and my servers, right? Here's the client secret that says you can charge this secret that will come back to our servers to fulfill a payment. So what it's going to do is it's basically going to tokenize, if you will, the intent someone wishes to pay on this checkout. In our case, like I said, it's a donation, but it could be like a process of filling out your shopping cart, getting a total and saying, I want to pay that total. They say proceed to checkout. Send that total to our servers send it to Stripe's servers. Stripe's like, okay, they intend to pay this amount. Here's the client secret that is attached to that. Send that client secret back to our website, and boom, pop up the checkout form to fill out their credit card info. That's the new workflow. And again, there's a TLDR at the bottom of this lecture for that. So again, it's not a protected route unless you want to make sure that your users are logged in. So if you learn authentication, you're wondering, should this be protected? It's up to you. It depends on what your client or what your app's needs are. That's my favorite non-answer. I don't know. It depends on what you need. So anyway, let's take a look at some of the pseudocode here. This will be I say pseudocode. This is almost exactly what we're going to be writing. We're going to be making a new router. So we're going to have Express imported. We're going to have Stripe imported. This is that Stripe node library that, again, will take a couple particular properties. So we're going to make a new instance of the Stripe library. This is a class object here we are constructing. Instantiate a new class object. There we go. That's the terminology. Our secret key here, string value, is the first parameter to our constructor. And what this is going to do is, again, let Stripe know who is connecting and whose dashboard should be filling out with these payment intents. You can paste it right here, but once again, do not do that. Use an environment variable instead and keep that crap hidden from your GitHub, or I will track you down myself as angrily as the web scrapers for Stripe's API keys do. Then we're going to pass a configuration object that has several properties we can add to it. The only really required one is this one here called API version. You can see that I am trying to, as I'm recording this video, have one of the newest versions of their API. So hot stuff here. Hot off the press, X3, hottest one right here. We got the newest API version right here, and with TypeScript, this will auto-complete to whatever new version you need, but you can always just pick on this one whenever you're watching this video and trying to implement it to your own applications. And there's a new one here also I found out called TypeScript property set to true for, I guess, TypeScript IntelliSense support, where it has some kind of condition that will then bring in additional typings. I've never seen that before, but if that's what they recommend you do to add TypeScript support, then let's go for it, y'all. So yeah, we're going to add this TypeScript true in our boilerplates case. We make a new express router. This could be added wherever you want into like a donate route, whatever you want to call it. I don't really care. We called it API payment intent. So this is a post request because we're going to be sending a request body of information, particularly the amount, along with it. So we're going to be making a request to our own servers from our front ends. Remember, imagine we have a input that says, how much do you want to donate? They put in a 10. That 10 probably gets JSON stringified, and our code makes a fetch post request to our server's location/API/payment intent. That request comes in here in the following runs. We grab the amount from the request body, and then we're going to try the following promise. So here is where we get to use their Stripe, our Stripe variable that is configured with our connected Stripe key, API version, all that fun stuff. So like I mentioned before, and like we saw in the Mailgun lecture and walkthroughs, we are provided this wrapper function for ease of use. So check it out. What we're going to do is we're going to await this promise to finish because it is a server communication. So our Express server is now talking to the Stripe server. The Stripe server gets the request, makes sure all the headers are set correctly, gets the right info and parameters, and then sends back a response. And that is a non-zero amount of time, aka asynchronous code. So we await our Stripe variable, which is connected. There is a subproperty called PaymentIntents, their newest API, has a property called surprise.create. Create a new payment intent API. We pass it an object with several properties. The two minimum required properties are what type of currency, because again, Stripe can take payments from all over the world. Check out their documentation for what the three-letter codes you're looking for are. We are doing US dollars since we are based here in Alabama. I do have a lot of international students, but this is what I'm working with, and this is what the bulk of our students are going to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that in here. But again, just check out the Stripe documentation and look up currency, and you'll find out what the amounts and what the three-letter codes are. So we're doing US dollars. There are 100 cents to $1. So you can also look up a table in the Stripe documentation that shows you this property right here. So the property is amount. Remember, this variable amount up here comes from our request body, and then you multiply it by the smallest unit of the currency you are using. So if we are doing US dollars, there are 100 cents to every dollar. So I take that amount, multiply it by 100, that will convert my dollar amount to a cents amount, right? So the smallest unit of the currency you are using is what you want here. So I multiply it by 100, and then we send that to the Stripe servers. The Stripe servers are like, okay, someone intends to pay this amount with this backend key and that front end key combo. I'm going to create this pending payment intent and say, okay, someone intends to pay this. Here's a secret you're going to send back to your website that you can then use in your checkout process. All right. So at this point, if you go look on the Stripe dashboard, it will create a pending payment to be either rejected, fulfilled, or whatever. So that's what's going to happen. And that payment intent is a big old fat nested object of tons of properties. In our newbie case, we only care about one particular property, which is client_secret. This value must be sent to our front end, and our front end elements component, once we get there, don't stress about it, we'll have to have this injected into it as a prop in order for it to work. That's a big change in the payment intent API compared to the old create payment token process. So we can send this as pizza. It doesn't matter. I sent it as client secret because I wanted to be a little bit different variable name from client_secret so we know what is our code versus their code. So we simply send to the front end some kind of message, some kind of response that it basically includes just the client secret along with whatever other content you want. You can actually console log this payment intent object and take a look at it. I'm sure the documentation will also show its properties and values. And then we simply send an error if one happens, and that is all we really need to set up on our server. This is actually simpler than it used to be. So yeah, this is an intermediary step that creates a payment we intend to pay, and then we had to set up the front end to actually check that out. But I think I've rambled enough for this lecture. I'm going to see y'all in the next one where I discuss and show you an example of how you could set up your React client-side code. It is going to be a multi-step form. We have to take an amount, create an intent out of it, then head to the checkout form, complete the checkout, and then possibly redirect to a thank you page or thank you confirmation style page. So we're going to talk about that in the next video. Since that's where it gets more complicated, I really want to dedicate an individual lecture to it, and then the TLDR be at the end. And then we're going to go ahead and actually code this out together in a walkthrough. So I'll see y'all in the next video.